Let us go back to Outputs tab and place your cursor on Total Risk, cell D2. Then click again on the tornado icon. Remember that the risk with the greatest impact on the total risk is availability of construction materials with a coefficient of 0.59, and the category with the greatest impact is logistics risk with a coefficient of 0.68. Click on the tornado chart icon to generate it. After closing this chart and with your cursor remaining on total risk, click on the scatterplot icon on DT Simulators ribbon. The following window appears. Out of this window, select Availability of Construction Materials on the Inputs section, and the following scatterplot will appear after clicking OK. A scatterplot is a type of mathematical diagram that uses Cartesian coordinates to display the values of two variables for a data set. It is used when one or more variables is under the control of the experimenter. If there's a parameter that is systematically increased or decreased by the experimenter, it is called a control parameter or independent variable, and is usually represented along the horizontal axis, the abscissa axis. This is represented by the variable chosen, availability of construction materials. The measured or dependent variable is usually represented along the vertical axis, the ordinate axis. If there's no dependent variable, any variable can be plotted on each axis, and the scatterplot will show the degree of linear correlation between the two variables. A scatterplot can suggest several types of correlations between variables with a given confidence interval. The correlation can be positive, an increase, a negative, a decrease, or no, the variables are simply not correlated. A line of fit, also called a trend line, has been drawn in order to study the correlation between the variables. One of the most powerful aspects of a scatterplot, however, is its ability to show nonlinear relationships between variables. This diagram shows 10,000 points. The 10,000 iterations or possible combinations between the variable availability of construction materials and total risk. The coefficient of 0.59 is represented by the fitted line. The greater the degree of association of the 10,000 points with respect to the fitted line, the closer all the points will be to it. Now, with your cursor still on total risk, click on scatterplot icon and select logistics risk. Observe what happens when you choose the category of logistics risk in relation to total risk with a coefficient of 0.68, as we have mentioned before. It can be seen how the set of points now tends to concentrate more towards the adjusted line. What this diagram partially expresses is that when the logistics risk is high, consequently, the total risk will also be. The presence of some extreme values towards the upper right side makes us suspect that under extreme conditions caused by very high logistics risks, perhaps also caused by extreme scenarios of availability of construction materials, this will in many cases have a definite impact on the total risk. Now, with your cursor placed on top of cell D4 for logistics risk, knowing that availability of construction materials is its main driver, click on the scatterplot icon and select this latter risk from the dialog box. Then click OK. We observe the relatively high correlation coefficient of 0.88 between this risk and its category. In contrast, there are weak relationships between variables that can be observed through this same scatterplot. For example, when returning to outputs over logistics risk, click on the tornado icon to remember which is the second most significant risk. It is safety risks causing accidents and injuries, with a coefficient of 0.38. Now, after closing this chart, just click on the scatterplot icon to generate a graphical representation between logistics risk and the chosen risk output from the dialog, safety risks causing accidents and injuries. After closing this chart on the scatterplot icon again, but now this time, select the input with the least impact over logistics risk, problems with subcontractors and suppliers. The following scatterplot appears. Clearly, an indeterminate cloud of points is observed on the x-axis that fail to somehow relate problems with subcontractors and suppliers to logistic risk on the y-axis. The correlation coefficient is very weak, just 0.04, which shows that the impact of this risk over the risk category logistics is not perceivable. Even less is the degree of impact of this risk of poorly drafted contracts with respect to total risk. By placing your cursor on total risk, clicking on the scatterplot icon, and then selecting this risk out of a list, you will see the following chart. Project management could well focus on other risks that will eventually have a significant impact on results as opposed to this one. Remember that a PNG file has been saved with the name scatterplot.png on the same directory where the workbook file has been saved. You can use this file to insert it into your documents and/or your presentations.